All right, folks, I'm going to call our meeting to order. For the record, this is the December 18th, a little off schedule here, 2019 meeting of the Addison Central School District, meeting at Middlebury Union High School. And let's do a quick round of introductions, and I think we will hold off on the administrators because they're going to be presenting a little bit later, just to keep everybody's speed going along here. I just would like to say we have two board members joining us by phone. They're away. Suzanne Buck and Amy is on, McGlashan's on the other phone. So they're on mute, so they'll chime in when they feel the need to, but not during introductions. So that's why there's a little bit of noise over here. Anyway, Chip, would you lead us off?
Chip Malcolm.
Victoria Jenny. Jory Jacobite.
Mary Gill.
Davina Damery. Mary Cullinane.
Peter Comlin.
Peter Burrows, Superintendent.
Lorraine Morse.
Jen Newpeter.
Peg Martin.
Brittany Gilman, Business Manager.
Thanks, everybody. As always, this is the time in our agenda when we are welcoming public comment. We've got a budget-filled meeting tonight with a lot of presentations and a lot of information. But this would be the time to let us know, those of you who have comments to make, this is an opportune time to do it. And again, it's a time for you to speak and for us to listen. And I would open the floor to anybody who would like to speak. We just ask that you state your name and where you're from. Yes, please.
Hi, Peter. Chris Kramer, Friends of Cornwall School. Thanks for coming to our meeting the other day. I just wanted to let you know, and the board members might be interested, that following up, Peter came to our meeting and we talked a little bit about the facilities process and that kind of thing, and we had some questions around the tax implications of different scenarios and that kind of thing. And I got a bunch of questions from Cornwall parents around that, and because of that, I followed up on our meeting. I haven't had a chance to share it with anybody, but to just put something together that would show, like, a lot of the questions were, what would be the implications, you know, to one of our households of closing a school or that kind of thing. And so I ran through and did a spreadsheet and actually verified that with some of the folks from the legislative joint fiscal office. And so I did put that together, and I'd be happy to just share that with board members if they're interested in sort of what would it mean to let's say a $200,000 household or a $90,000 income household to close a school, and what is that? How do the mechanics actually work? Because I take it from the last board meeting when you guys were talking about the tax letter, like, so there were some questions around how the mechanics of that actually work and what are the actual implications of that. So I have a little like cheat sheet that I put together that actually shows that, and I'd be happy to share that with folks.
Great, thank you.
Chris, could you spell your last name for me?
Sure, it's Kramer, K-R-A-M-E-R.
Thank you.
And sorry I didn't have a chance to share it before this meeting, but I'm happy to in the next 2 weeks.
Thanks. Yeah, if you want to just mail it to me, I'm happy to spread it about. Yeah. Thanks. Anybody else? All right. Well,
I thought I'd just say something really quickly. I'm Joanna Doria. I live in Ripton. I appreciate the difficult position and the discussion that's going to happen tonight. I really do. I will say that I think that the way the education funding system works now, with declining enrollment and with the stressors that the state is currently having to deal with, is flawed. And I think that there's a connection, and I know, Peter, that people have approached you with your dual roles, and I think that there is a bridge here, and I can't ignore it, and I can't ignore the potential for this district and the strength of this board and our communities to really make some change in the bigger picture. And I know that sounds very like pie in the sky, and it sounds very maybe detached from what you guys are feeling with this immediacy of this budget, but I can't ignore it, and I can't not say anything, so I just wanted to say that.
I'd recommend you speak to your legislator, but seeing as how you just did, that was very good. Thanks, Jeff. Thank you. Anybody else?
Hi.
Yes.
I'm John Pickens from Whitbread. I'd kind of just like to encourage the board, the upcoming January meeting that you're planning, to at least have one voice in the room that is really emphasizing the value of smaller schools, because I know from the facilities committee meetings and planning and engagement meetings that, the representative from Truist Collins, David Epstein, might be introducing some remarks and some numbers and the results of his studies. And I think that's great. But he obviously has a kind of architectural bias towards what he terms like a modern two-section classroom school, and that was sort of the implied standard at the first facilities committee meeting that I went to. And even at the meeting last night in passing, he refers to this, the school in Ripton as having 4 classrooms as a negative, right? And I just think if you really want to be taken seriously in your statement that you care about our voices and all the meetings that you set up and all the time that's been taken for that. I know from in Wadebridge, a lot of the speakers emphasize what we see as the value of the school being is relatively small. And I know that long-term, the sustainability of those small schools might be under threat or in question, and I understand that. But at least recognize we came forward with that explicit point that we value the smallness of our school, and that's what creates a really strong sense of community in place. So I feel like if at that facility, at that public forum meeting, you're inviting a lot of people there, if it's David Epstein as the sort of main dominant voice in the room, and he mentions these things in passing, like this is what a modern school should look like, this is, what a school is deficient in certain ways, and we hear him talking, that's implying that's our school, and there's not another voice in the room that's at least giving some serious consideration to the merits and benefits of a smaller school. And I feel like that's going to kind of pull the community apart instead of bringing them together, and that might ultimately be a disservice to your long-term goal and vision as the board. So I think in some way recognizing all the different voices and considerations that have been brought to the table during that public forum would be very, very helpful for holding the various voices and communities together. It's just something to keep in mind.
Thank you, John.
Zim. His name is Zim.
Anybody else? All right, well, we'll move along on our agenda. And, all right, so recommendation to approve the minutes of December 9th, 2019. Can we have a motion to approve those minutes, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Yes, Chip?
No, I was
Who moved it?
talking to the secretary and said I made the motion.
I
Chip
second.
made the motion. Chip and
second.
Mary to
Yeah.
I was not
approve the
in
minutes.
Not there yet. Not there yet.
I may not be here either.
Yes,
It
Davina.
says that I wasn't here, but I don't believe I missed that
I wasn't
meeting.
named as not present. I wasn't listed in either group present or not present.
So Amy's trying to make an amendment, I think, to
Yep.
the minutes, that she
Yes,
needs to
please.
be noted as not present. at the
Thank you.
meeting.
And Davina was noted as not present and was present, correct?
Okay.
Yes, I wrote a few.
So there may have been a third dimension that we
Sure.
didn't see.
We did sneak in.
All right, with said changes included in amended minutes, all those in favor of approving these, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? And let's take a show of hands, who's abstaining? I think just Peg was.
What?
Abstaining
You're
from,
abstaining because you weren't at the meeting, right?
yeah,
That is correct.
Likewise,
Wait,
Amy as well.
sorry, I just realized that
okay.
I had voted yes, but I need to abstain. Yes, thank you.
All right, all set?
She was not.
Lorraine? All set?
Yes, I think so. Amy was not present at the last meeting.
Yes.
And Davina was present at the last
Yeah.
meeting, and Amy and Peg are abstaining from voting.
Davina and Peg are, oh, no, Amy, you're right. With, yeah. I'm just looking at this. Sorry. I'm trying to help you.
Yeah. Let's see if we can do better with the bills.
Bills. There were 2 weeks we did not read bills, and so this week was a big week. On Monday, both Victoria and I read them. For the general fund, it was $505,198.18. Payroll expenses of $824,228.79, for a total of $1,329,426.97. And I move that we pay the bills.
Second.
Moved by Chip, second by Victoria. Any questions? Not, all those in favor of paying the bills as reported, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Excellent, thank you very much. And again, I'll just check in, are you guys able to have enough people to do the work every time?
Victoria and I tend to do it because it meets our schedule, but when one of us can't, we recruit someone else,
Okay, great.
at least at the present time.
All right, well, into the main section of tonight's agenda. This is really our first look at the budget and where we're at. And Peter, before we sort of dive in, if you wouldn't mind just sort of giving, especially the audience, an idea of what's going to unfold as we sit here.
So can I stand up over here?
Please.
So we'll be starting off by talking broadly about what's happening at the state level. We'll talk about enrollment. We'll look at some of the factors that are affecting our FY21 budgets. We'll have a period after that where principals will be presenting their kind of budget. They don't have individual budgets per se. We have one budget. They'll be talking about their school as it relates to the budget. They'll be talking about changes that are happening at their school year to year. They each have about 3 minutes. And go for it. It's going to be good. And then we'll finish up with looking at more specifics in our budget after the principals present, and then we'll open it up for questions. So this is our first draft. We timed the first draft here because we receive our equalized pupil count by statute on the 15th. And so in the last couple of years, our first draft has been right at this time. We did receive our equalized pupil count this year, and we'll be talking about kind of how that impacts our budget in its entirety. So entering into this budget cycle, we've been talking a lot about the budget. We've been talking a lot about, I think, where we are as a district as it relates to the facilities master plan. The master plan and our budget are kind of inextricably linked, and a conversation not only ACSD has been having, but districts throughout Vermont have been having of how do we respond and what do we do as the kind of the mechanics of ed funding start to catch up with some of the districts in the state that have seen a loss of enrollment over the last probably 10 years, where we've seen this kind of steady decline. We'll be presenting, and I think Brittany's going to present enrollment figures momentarily, but the last 2 years we are down 100 students. And so the impact of that on our budget, as we see increases in general, year-to-year increases, 3.5% is around average. We have some other things we're going to talk about tonight that are unusual in this budget year. But looking at where the salary and medical costs to our budget, as I said, around 3.5 when you kind of roll up everything, and then combining that with a loss of equalized pupils. And equalized pupils is basically the number of students that we serve. It's a weighted number of student count, and it's how we are funded. When you combine the loss with that 3.5 increase, you can see 6, 7, 8% increases. Tonight we're bringing an 8.8% increase on equalized pupil. We went into this budget looking ahead and knowing that we're engaged in some pretty significant kind of exploration in figuring out how we're going to fund moving forward. And we're talking now like looking out 10 years, right, in terms of making a plan and a roadmap for how we invest resources as we get up to the excess spending threshold. The pressure that Joanna mentioned earlier in terms of budgets in Vermont are impacted by this thing called the excess spending threshold, which puts pressure on budgets because every dollar you spend over that excess spending threshold, you are double taxed as a community. It's been around for a long time. It's something that many of you have heard year after year. It's what has caused a lot of the action and activity you're seeing in districts around us. A lot of the news coverage for Addison Northwest and Addison Northeast, or Mount Abe rather, is in direct relation to conversations around that threshold. Like that is the line, that is the bar. We'll talk tonight about kind of what that means for us this year as we look at an equalized pupil drop of, right now, of 60 students. The number we have, and I hope I'm not stealing.
You are totally stealing all my thunder.
Okay. So I'm going to slow myself down. I'm going to allow you. Why don't you come up now?
Okay.
Because I feel like I'm just going to go all the way to the end, and then I'm going to feel really bad.
Talk about maintaining for another year.
I did, yeah, yeah. So I'm going to let Brittany talk about more specifics to give some thunder over here. There you go.
Pass the torch. All right.
Thank you.
So as Peter said, we're going to start to talk about enrollment a little bit. And the reason that we look at this so closely is because of the way that we're funded. And we'll talk about that a little later on as well, so you can understand, why the focus on this number. So we take account ourselves in September each year for our own comparison purposes. And these enrollment numbers exclude pre-K. We do this because not every not every school, elementary school in the district operates a pre-K program. So we're trying to compare apples to apples here. But you can see, while some have been somewhat steady. Shoreham, for example, has seen a pretty significant increase, and that's offset by some decreases in other schools. So cumulatively, we've lost 100 students in the past 2 years. 80% of that or so is at the secondary level, and about 20% at the elementary level. We're seeing some large class sizes graduate, so we talk about the new norm and the approaching sixth grade, the new size of the graduating classes, which looks like to be more around 115, 120, whereas, we used to be up in the, correct me if I'm wrong, 150, 160.
Yeah, up to 180.
Up to 180. Yeah. So we're kind of seeing a new norm in the class sizes that we're graduating. And then you can see this is just illustrating over the past 10 years the decline. So in the past 10 years, it's been fairly precipitous. There was a portion here where it was fairly level, and then we had a little bump here. But we've been seeing quite a decline.
That bump was pre-K, wasn't it?
I think it was. So in FY18, we started getting credit for pre-K students that were in private pre-qualified partnerships. So we do get 0.46 of a weighting for each of those students that is of pre-K age and attends a private pre-qualified pre-K program that we're in partnership with. So these are some preliminary calculations. The purpose of tonight is really to give a broad overview of the budget. As things start to come more into focus, we'll get a lot more specific and provide a lot more detail. And that detail often comes in the form of the budget book. If you haven't looked at it, it's, I think, one of the most valuable resources that we have to communicate with the community, both about the budget and our financial situation, and it also serves as our annual report. So we're able to let the community know what's going on in the school. And in that, and at a board meeting in January, we'll give you more specific information about the budget at each school as we can break it down, and then more information about each sort of what I would call functional level that's district-wide. So special education we consider district-wide, facilities we consider district-wide. We'll get much more in depth about those things. So tonight we're really looking at a high level. So our education spending right now looks like it's going up 5.23%. When that's combined with the equalized pupil drop of 3.32%, we're looking at an education spending per equalized pupil of 8.84%. And again, we'll get a little bit more in detail about this throughout the presentation, but using this equalized pupil figure, we're over the excess spending threshold by $289, but there are some things that are exemptions, are exempt from that. And I think we're estimating we're going to have about $230 in exemptions. So we'd be $59 over the threshold in that case. So what's an equalized pupil? We hear this term a lot. So the idea of an equalized pupil is to create an average student. So what happens is it's a 2-year average of ADM, all these, three letter initials. ADM is average daily membership. And this is collected, it's a student count that's collected between the 11th and 30th day of the school year. That's averaged over the course of 2 years, and then it's weighted. Some of the weighting's based on grade, so we get an increased weight for secondary students. That's why we feel the loss of secondary students more in this calculation. And we get weighted down for pre-K students. And then there are other weighting factors for poverty and ELL, which is English language learners. And it's also affected by the statewide ADM via what they call, what's called an equalization ratio. And so this is one of the mechanisms by which it becomes a statewide funding system. And we'll talk about that more, but essentially, because of Act 60, the amount that we pay in taxes does not just support Addison Central School District, it's a statewide funding system. And this is part of how we get there. So more about the excess spending threshold. So this is a result of Act 68, and it sets an amount per equalized pupil that, if exceeded, incurs an additional tax just for the dollars that are over that threshold. As I said, some costs are considered exempt. Debt for construction, certain special education costs, great time to notice a typo, and teachers' retirement costs. This generally increases about 2.5% each year. It increases by what's called the NEAP, which is the New England Economic Projection. And it's an index which measures multiple things, such as how much a contract can increase in a certain year without going back out to bid. Lots of fun other legalese, but basically it increases about 2.5% each year. So you can see where this is starting to present a problem when budgets are going up 3.5%, 4% a year. At some point, it catches up with you, and it's catching up with us, and it's catching up with districts around the state. So the current threshold for FY21 is $18,756. Tax rate and funding. So the tax rate in Vermont is quite complex. It's a statewide funding system. So we're not going to get into the tax rate implications.
Just turn this way a little bit, so we get a little more of your voice as well.
I'm sorry. We're not going to talk about the tax rate implications specifically for this budget here tonight because we don't have quite enough information for that. But I did want to talk a little bit about how the tax rate is calculated and what goes into that. So you start with your expenditure budget, which is just like it sounds. It's all the expenditures that it takes to run the school district for the coming year. And you subtract any revenues that you have. And those revenues come in the form of tuition, they come in the form of federal and state grants, they come in the form of reimbursements for various special education costs, and that equals your education spending. You divide this number by your equalized pupils, which we just talked about, and this creates your education spending per equalized pupil. This number has to be on the warning as well as the change year to year. Below this point, we really have no control over what happens. Really, we can only control up to education spending locally, and when I say control, we develop that budget. Most of the costs that we have are fixed in wages and benefits and other contracted things like utilities, but we develop that budget. The equalized pupil number is given to us by the state, and we do have to respond to that number, but sort of below this point in the calculation, everything is given to us, and our budget is just sort of funneled through it. So the equalized pupil number is divided by, the education spending per equalized pupil number is divided by the property yield, which is a number that is recommended by the tax commissioner and is set by the legislature. And it's essentially a figure that the legislature has to decide how much money they need statewide, and this is sort of a plug and play figure. So it can change from what we think it is now to what it's ultimately set at, but we won't have anything anything better to go on than what comes in the December 1st tax commissioner letter. And once you divide your equalized pupil number by your property yield, you get the equalized tax rate. So every town in ACSD will have the same equalized tax rate. The district will have the same equalized tax rate. We still have an incentive rate. It's 4 cents this year. That incentive rate came as a result of the voluntary unification. It started at 10 cents and it decreases 2 cents each year. So we're down to 4 cents for the coming year. And that gets taken off our equalized tax rate and gives us a revised equalized tax rate. And last but not least, the revised tax rate is divided by the common level of appraisal. And that's different for every town. And it's a function of real estate values in your town. And this equals your adjusted tax rate. So that's why every town in ACSD has a different tax rate. It's a function of the CLA. So I'm going to give you a break from this kind of thing and let the principals come up and speak, and then we'll get back more into budget specifics. Should we go in alphabetical order? That's how I memorize them.
We can go in alphabetical order. I'm sure Matthew would love that.
Yeah.
We'll go reverse alphabetical.
Do you want to sit on the stools? Do you want to sing?
I was hoping to do it via Skype, but hi, everybody. I'm Matthew Brakeman. I'm the principal in Bridport. And first, I wanted to thank you all, those of you who have come to visit Bridport. The kids are really certain that I'm not really in charge of the school. They suspect that Linda Barrett is in charge, but when Peter and you visit, then they're certain that the school's in good hands. So thank you for that. It takes pressure off me. We have a really simple scenario this year. When I came on board, the teachers and I began talking in my interview, I think, about the need for more social and emotional support in our school. So we have an unfilled paraprofessional position that has been unfilled this year that we're hoping to not fill and get more support and guidance for the upcoming year. So that is really simply the only staffing changes that we're looking at. We have 56 K through 6 students and 9 pre-K students this year. We're looking at about the same numbers next year. The staffing scenario for next year, it won't change in terms of numbers of teachers, just the guidance. But we are looking at, we have a big, for us, first and second grade group. It's 19 this year. It'll be 22 students next year. So the teachers and I have met twice this fall to look at changing possibly to pre-K and then a K1, have a standalone second grade, and then keep a 3-4 and a 5-6. Numbers fluctuate as we go through the year, so we're going to keep looking at that. So it'll either be that change will be proposed, or we'll keep it the way it is. That really is less than 3 minutes, but it really is, it's been a joy to get to know the school. We've taken, this year, I think the focus has been, Bridport kids are super duper smart, super duper energetic, and super duper unwilling to work for people they don't know. And I respect that very much. So I have done everything I can to get to know the kids, to get to know the staff, and we've focused on saying yes to challenges, which translated into IB terminology would be being risk takers. And so we are looking at the amount of time when our students say yes to a challenge, they do amazing work, and we're working with them to say yes to challenges more quickly. With more support from guidance, we feel like that will be great. And our teachers, because they've been there, they know the kids, and the kids are saying yes to challenges faster and faster. So when you come visit us on January 13th, be ready to work on a math facts game, and please work on your 7s, 8s, and 9s, because you'll need to know. Thank you.
Someone's keeping track of alphabetical order back.
Right, this is a test to see if you know where you are alphabetically in the
Line up in
district.
alphabetical order.
Hi, I'm Heather Robb, I'm the principal at Cornwall, and we were asked to talk about enrollment trends, any potential staffing changes, and then learning that's going on as a community. as far as enrollment trends go, I had to do a little research because I am new at Cornwall this year. And with what I found, actually, for the past 10 years, the numbers at Cornwall have been, well, the average is 80 in the past 10 years, and we are at 81 this year. It has ranged from, and I'll have to look because I wrote it down, 76 in the 2018-19 school year to 88 in the 2013-14 school year, and other than that, it's been right around 80. So that's not a big change, which is nice. As far as staffing goes, we did, it was projected this year that we would have 2 blended classrooms, which I know a lot of thought went into, and it was based on a number of factors, including classroom student dynamics, teacher knowledge of curriculum, as well as overall numbers. And those numbers changed right at the end of the summer. We had more students enroll in August than were anticipated. So we ended up altering those classes so that we ended up with just 1 blended classroom. And as a result, we did have to hire a teacher to take up another class, because we only had the 1 blended classroom. We anticipate, looking at numbers for next year, that that would stay the same. So we would we'll determine whether it would be the same class that stays blended or not for next year, but we still anticipate 1 blended class and the other are standalone classes. As far as community learning goes, I feel like that's been one of our big focuses this year as a community. And I put it out to the teachers to ask, and the question that ask them what they thought. And the question that came back to me was, are we talking about us learning as a community? Are we talking about the kids learning as a community? And so they asked me to share an example of each. As a staff community, there was some start last year, before I got here, with some teachers working on universal design, learning more about universal design for learning. That was also a district drive at the very beginning of this school year. And so as a staff, we made that a goal for the entire group. And so we have been working on that, learning more about it, practicing putting, designing lesson plans through that approach, and then coming together and discussing what's working well, and making adjustments with what's not from there, but talking, reflecting, and having it be really a main focus of just about everything that we are doing at Cornwall this year. And we anticipate that will continue beyond this year. And then as far as student learning goes, that was harder to come up because teachers want to talk about what's happening in their specific class. But what we realized in talking about it was when we have our all-school meetings, which are weekly, and everybody's together, they meet in multi-age groups, what's evolved this year is an emphasis on students learning how to present publicly. So each class has been taking turns, practicing ahead of time and getting in front of the group, presenting their learning in an audible voice. I'm hoping mine's audible now, hopefully I'm modeling it, and being able to look up rather than just read. And that's, as Matthew was saying, like that's embodying being a risk taker. No matter how well you know the material, it's scary, and practice helps. So that's been one of the big thrusts of learning for the community, for the students and teachers together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Jen Kravitz. I didn't print this out ahead of time, so I'm just going to hold my computer in case I lose my place. Thanks for coming, those of you who were able to come and visit, both as part of the Community Partnership Council and as a school board. It's been, and as the legislators, it's been really awesome having so many visitors in the past month. And we have a lot of students who are, sixth grade students who are student ambassadors, and they like really want people to come visit. So please come back anytime. You can tell me you don't want a student ambassador to show you around, but I would say probably half of the sixth grade class has signed up to be student ambassadors. So if you know of visitors, send them our way. We have students who want to show them around. So you saw the enrollment trends earlier with Peter and Brittany. Mary Hogan's down a little bit over the past 3 years. Generally, our class sizes are between 59 and 68. There's one outlier. The current first grade is a class right now of 51 students. So it's just an outlier. But because of those things and thinking about that class, we don't have any vacancies, but we are decreasing a teaching position by 1.0. It may or may not be related to that first grade class. We're started a conversation with the staff about how to think about that process to get staff input as we move through it. So that will come later in the spring. We also have a decrease of 2.0 support staff positions at the school. And as we're rethinking and thinking about the alignment of best practice research around staffing and the work that the System of Supports design team is doing, which I know isn't concluded, but having representatives on that team and being able to think about that. A lot of the work that we're doing, that Michaela and I are doing, it has been really thinking about school culture, creating a common vision that we're all behind, and that is really the driver of decisions that we're making, and then building systems. So three of them, three big areas that I just wanted to highlight, and they're in the budget book, but so when that comes out, you'll see that. But I just really wanted to highlight. One is around our social emotional learning work. We're really using the framework that's developed by CASEL, which is a highly researched nonprofit around social, emotional, and academic learning. And we're using that as a framework to develop a vision around social, emotional learning. We have Shauna Lee, who's our social, emotional leader, has been working with teachers as well as with students. We've really been working collaboratively to think about how to best meet students' needs in our partnership with CSAC, which is shifting the way some people are working with students to best support them. And we're also really working with staff on professional development around both their own social emotional needs as well as those of students, because all the research will tell you that if you don't start with the adults, it's not going to transfer to the students. The second big area that we have been working on is really related to social emotional learning, is really building strong student leadership this year. Both in the upper grades we started in August with a 6th grade leadership retreat. That was new. We have a student council in 5th and 6th grade. 4 representatives just came last week to present to Michaela and I about 2 big changes that they were proposing. They were incredibly organized and thoughtful and are starting to change things at school based on what they see. There's student ambassadors, and then every month we have an all-school meeting. And each class is in charge of running the all-school meeting. So it's the second Thursday of every month at 8:45. If you're around, come by. This month was run by the 2nd grade. So I thought next month was kindergarten and pre-K, but they told me it was in February, so I need to look at who's in charge in January. And the last one, we just have been really fostering and trying to build this collaboration with partners. With MESA, the parent group, as well as the partnership group. We've held a lot of events. And then different teachers are reaching out in different ways. So the pre-K teachers have been working with the college math professors. Brandy Corbett is working with National Geographic this year. The 4th grade is working with the Audubon Society and all of those fit into units of inquiry. So it's all great stuff. It's all about school culture and climate, and about providing an awesome education, both academically and socially, for all kids. Thanks.
So good evening, everyone. I think you all know me, Bill Lawson, principal at the high school. In terms of, you've seen some information on the budget, the high school population is staying relatively stable at the moment. We're about 540. I'm projecting that next year we'll be around 530 in terms of students 9 through 12. As a result, we have actually, we've been anticipating this year that we had several positions that were in the current year budget that we did not fill because we didn't see the need to fill those, so we will be able to reduce those in the budget. So there are several positions, both professional and staff positions, that we'll be reducing. And there are also some couple of positions that we'll be making very small adjustments to in terms of raising them, raising the percentage of FTE. At MUHS, it's been a very exciting first semester. We're almost reaching that mid-year point, and we've been undertaking a lot of challenges. The staff has worked very diligently at implementing the changes, mostly regarding IB. I'm pleased to tell you this evening that we just heard this past week that that the middle years program, where we have partner schools with the moms at MUHS, has received authorization. So we're really proud of that. And it was a very quick turnaround in terms of IB. Those folks were here just prior to the Thanksgiving break, and they informed us this past Monday, I believe. So we're now, at the high school, we're authorized in 2 programs, the diploma program and NYP. We are in our first cohort of DP students. We have 37 students actively engaged in that now. I would anticipate that we'll double that next year as we bring our second cohort on, probably at least double that. We have been doing a lot of changes around curriculum and courses for that process. We've also undertaken new grading systems to both go along with IB as well as state mandates, and we've implemented a lot of new software and whatnot to help us deal with those changes. So there's been a lot of change, but I think everyone, students, teachers, probably and parents, are bearing up. It's a lot of new stuff to learn. There's a lot of new ways of looking at things, and I think everyone's been working really hard to do that. So I'm pretty excited for the future.
Thanks, Bill, for stealing my thunder. I wanted to get there before Bill so I could say we were accepted, we were authorized as an NYP program. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chris Frankfort, the principal of the middle school. The middle school, as of today, is 12 students down from where we were when I presented to you last year at this point. Although, if you hang out with middle schoolers, when there's a snow squall outside, it didn't feel like we were down 12 students. The noise level this afternoon was unbearable in that building. Middle school has had a fabulous year. I cannot commend my faculty and staff enough for their work this year, and especially in light of the middle school has lost 2 beloved members of our school community who have passed away this fall. And for our teachers and our staff to keep going every single day with a smile on their face, giving it all to our students is just a credit to them as professionals. They are amazing. Our staffing pattern for next year, our biggest issue this year has been our world language or language acquisition class sizes. Some of our language classes reached 25 to 27 students. We have adjusted schedules for the remainder of this year, but we have added 0.5 FTE language acquisition in this current draft of the budget. We're continuing to move forward, planning for the 6th grade coming forward to us. We can't wait. And that process is very complicated, but is moving along nicely. And I do know that many of you on the board will be receiving letters because I have received letters about wanting to change the start and end time of school banning homework, sanitary supplies for free in the bathroom, and one-to-one devices. And I know that many of these are going to be brought forward to the school board because I don't actually have the power to change like the starting incomes. And so the students are really excited about that, and our collaboration with the high school continues to be just a wonderful thing. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tracy Harrington. I'm the principal at Bridgeton Elementary, and it doesn't feel like there's a lot to report. We've been fortunate to stay kind of steady with our configurations for many years. We have 4 multi-age classrooms. We currently have a small group of 6th graders, just 3. So we anticipate next year having a slightly larger population. Right now we're at 52. Next year could be 3 more, 4 more. We have 7 students from Hancock and Granville. And we have had a pretty steady staffing model for the last few years. We've had some turnover, so we may have different people. We have welcomed a few new staff, and things have been going very well. I would say we continue to, similar to what other schools are doing, we continue to roll out the IB, PYP, where we have teachers working in grade level teams, which has been great. They're launching all their units and really working on getting our transdisciplinary model strengthened across the schools and across the grades. What else? Lots of good stuff. I don't feel like it's been said. So what's nice, I think, is how we're really aligned with the work that the other elementary schools are doing. So it feels, like there's a lot of collaboration. There's a lot of chance for discussion and reflection. We're working with the kids to become thinkers and inquirers and risk takers, and I think we're really doing that as adults as well. It's been a big step moving towards IB, and it requires a lot of flexibility and a lot of courage, and teachers are definitely doing that. They're showing a lot of hard work, a lot of perseverance, which is what we want. We are working as a school with a lot of the central ideas that the different units have. How do they kind of work together so we can do things as a whole school? We meet every week in an all-school meeting. And I'd say our focus this year is about how our experiences shape our identity. We're doing some work around our understanding ourselves and our identity, and how our beliefs and values shape our identity. So we'll be having some experiences in the second half of the year with artists in residence, and helping kids kind of learn more about themselves and their identity, and how that is what influences their beliefs and values. So that's it.
All right, let's see if we can manage all of this. Glasses, computer. So, hi, my name is Fernanda, and I am principal at Salisbury. We have enjoyed a very steady population for many, many years, and until this year, when we actually lost 18 students from last year to this year. So that was totally unexpected, and we are trying to understand the impact of that change in our schools. So currently, we are 85 students, including preschool. We have a class of 12 6th graders graduating, and a class of 12 incoming kindergartners that we're projecting will be at our school next year. Our classes have been between 11 and, well, currently are between 11 and 12, except for first grade, which right now has 7 students. So that led us to think about how to combine a class, which we haven't had to do in many, many years at Salisbury. We do have 2 combined 5-6s that we did intentionally in order to create better peer groups for those students. But this is more of a it's a different way of combining a class. And so that also means that we are reducing our staff by one teacher. All our teachers have been with us, except for our 6th grade teacher. They have all been with us for at least 10 years. So it is a significant transition for us. And I think that we will be the guinea pig school in that one of our teachers will probably be moving to another building. And so we are in the process of understanding how to make that decision, what we need to consider. And I will say that I have communicated with the staff and they were all very supportive and understanding. As difficult as it is, I think we will be able to, we have the strength within us to work together to make the change be a good one. So that's probably the biggest challenge that we're facing right now. I would say that Salisbury identifies itself as a steward school. Our students have a lot of interest in being stewards of the earth and their environment. We continue to have a forest classroom. Our 4th graders go out with our kindergartners every week into the forest classroom and really love the land and learn to respect it and be able to take care of it. Our 1st and 2nd graders have embraced the community garden project. 3rd and 4th graders continue their commitment with Strawless World and just decided that they would like to reignite their enthusiasm for convincing all the restaurants in the area to stop using straws. We have groups of students who are looking to figure out how we can get rid of paper towels. So basically their concern for the environment runs deep, and our Early Act Club that is in conjunction with Rotary is really guiding some of these works, and the kids are organizing themselves into figuring out how to follow up with these projects. So that's been, I would say that that's a running theme in our school that both the teachers and the students embrace. We also collaborate in teams in grade bands so that our 1st and 2nd grade classrooms have the same schedule, 3rd and 4th have the same schedule, 5th and 6th have the same schedule, so that there can be collaboration and sharing of students and increase the resources that each of the students can receive. So that has been really significant. So I think that that's really what I have to share. All right. Thank you.
So welcome, Mike from Shora, and thinking about stewards. I often think that if I could track my students and see what professions they go into, I have a high suspicion that a lot of Shoreham students are going to be caregivers. They're going to be doctors, nurses, teachers, educators. That I see a lot of our students practicing caring, and I see the community coming together, and I see a lot of the school reinforcing and building that. So thanks for prompting my thought with that. If I was to talk about some big things this year, one big thing is we've had the same classroom teachers for over 10 years, and this year we have 3 new classroom teachers. So that's a significant change. It's really interesting to experience that and see what has remained common and consistent. You're like, oh, this is our school, this is the way we do it, even when you bring someone new. And then also getting new ideas and new people in the building is really nice and refreshing. Another big thing this year is our work with IB. As we've been doing this for 4 years, this is the first year where I'm going in the classroom and I'm hearing what students are saying or looking at the work up on the wall, and I'm seeing it start to shape their thought patterns. So I'm really excited about how IB is helping our kids think deeper, and I think we're starting to get to the part where I can point at something and say, this kid is thinking differently, they're working differently, and as they continue to do this, they're going to develop a thought process that's going to help them be the student that IB promises to produce. So starting to see that system reach the students. Last year was the first year I really saw teachers, and I was like, oh, those teachers are talking and thinking at a whole different level now. It's starting to change the practice, and it's really exciting to see it start to impact what the students are doing. So if we get to the logistics of the budget side of it, our student numbers have been going up every year. Our first year here, we were around 62 students. And as you do this, it's been continually going up. You saw in the presentation, it said 91 students. Come January 1st, I'm anticipating we're going to be at 95. Next year, we should be over 100. You know, and then from there, things change, people move in and out. But it seems to be every 2 to 3 families that move in will have a family that moves out. So last year, we really made the big budget decision for this year. We had decided, we had a 3-4 that was blended and a 5-6 that was blended. And the 3-4 was around 22 students. And while I have seen classrooms of 22, 26 function at a high level, a blended classroom, I believe, is a different creature. And we had students move in during the school year, and it looked like that class was going to be 26 or more students. So in May, we decided that it was the right time to decouple that and hire a separate teacher for our 3rd and 4th grade. And that has worked out really well. Next year, if we were to go back to a 3-4, we would be looking at 26 students again. So the recommendation in the budget is that kids still have a 3rd grade teacher and still have a 4th grade teacher. So it looks like an addition to the budget because that wasn't budgeted for this year. Our 5-6 classroom will be our blended classroom, and that should be around 20 students. The other thing to note in the budget, and I think we'll get to that in the budget presentation later, we're having a disproportionate number of students that move into the district that are coming to us with plans such as IEPs. It's been a great year. Things are going really well. We're excited. It's also been wonderful to have the school board coming out in a variety of different ways. Oh, and that reminds me of the other big change this year is our community partnership team. They've really kind of found, so the image I was thinking of is it's as if you're pushing a sled, and all of a sudden the sled starts to go downhill, and you're not pushing anymore, you're riding along on it. So it was something we started, we were trying to get momentum, and this year I feel like it's moving quicker than I am because the community is leading, coming up with the ideas and doing the work, and it's creating a variety of different things they're tackling, things that I wouldn't be pushing for that need to be done, and it's also achieving a lot more than we could, you know, was led just by a school group. So that's very exciting. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Nicole Carter, the last school talk tonight, Waybridge Elementary School. So I'm told that I inherited a lot of change. There's been tremendous staff turnover at Waybridge. And I'm also told that we are doing a wonderful job of maintaining rigorous learning, silliness, connection with each other. We're holding tight at 52 students this year. That will be true again next year. When the 5th and 6th grade both move, we'll be down to about 46 as projected, but obviously not guaranteed. Next year, we're going to reduce staffing by 0.5 a library assistant as we're working really hard on reconfiguring how we look at supporting students this year, using data, trying to target interventions pretty quickly so we can get kids where we want them to be, and then we can move on to something else, and that has shifted how we work with staff. We just finished the Popsicle Bridge engineering project, so 3 times this year we'll do school-wide projects. The students are teamed together across grade levels, so we have 6th graders teaming with 1st graders and with 3rd graders. Engineering was the first one. Next is dance, creative expression focused on Martin Luther King's beloved community. And then we'll have another engineering project that we have not designed yet. I didn't bring my piece of paper up with me. I'm trying to think what else. I would say that overall, this year has been a year of reflection and deep thinking. That the staff, because we range from the brand new, we have a brand new teacher right out of Middlebury College who's phenomenal, Rebecca, and then we have staff who've been at Waybridge for a number of years. We're working together almost every day. We come together and we look deeply at what's happened that day and try to figure out, is it what we want to be doing? Is it aligned with who we are and how we want to be? And shifting some practices towards creating deep connections for kids in a variety of ways. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Thank you. Well, thank you, everyone, for speaking. It was much more entertaining, probably, than the things that I'm going to continue on to talk about. So it was great to hear about some of the things that are going on in the school, and I'm going to take you through the principals and try to stand over here, because I think I'll be able to address everybody a little better, if that works out okay. So if you don't have a packet, there are some at the table. Everyone should have a packet, and I'll tell you what's contained in here. So the first page is the preliminary budget summary. So this is district-wide, and we break it down sort of by functional level. Student instruction, obviously, is the biggest piece of that, and then we kind of break things out by department. There are some cost control expenditures here. Those are state and federal grants. Those are estimates at this time. We won't know what our grant allocations are in most cases until the spring, and then we adjust based on that. And then our revenues down below. After that is a memo, and I'm going to talk through that memo a little bit. That just encapsulates some of the, more significant changes in the budget. And then there are a few charts on here that I printed out just because I'm not sure how visible they'll be when I project them up here. And then there's some information about fund balance. So we'll talk through all that. So what goes into our budget? Why the increase? So the major drivers, as we've talked about many times, are wages and benefits. So we have to take into account contractual wage increases. Call movements is when a teacher might move to a master's degree from bachelor's plus 15, and that comes with a different position on the salary schedule. So we try to capture all that as much as we know right now. Health insurance premiums really is a big driver. So it's up 12.9% this year. Last year was around 11%. So that's over $500,000 that's baked into the cake, if you will. So that's pretty painful. Statewide negotiations, you may have heard that all school districts in the state were subject to statewide negotiations for health benefits. And as a result of that decision, there's a potential $125,000 increase in cost for a half year that the new plan will be in effect. And essentially the plan opens up all tiers of coverage to support staff. Right now only a single plan is available, so it's hard to predict what the exact cost of that will be, but we think that it will be around $125,000 for a half year, which would mean moving forward, that's $300,000 a year. And then we also have to take into account any contracts that we have. Transportation contract, contracts that we might have with outside service providers like CSAC, for occupational therapy, physical therapy, anything like that. So we talked through a lot of these FTE changes, which is staffing changes. The principals talked about all this. I wanted to summarize that a bit, and I'll also talk some about the other functional areas. So all these areas, except for a couple, are captured in student instruction. The student instruction is going up just over 4%. Wages and benefits, main driver, but there are some variations here. So we talked about in Bridgeport, the reallocation of a paraeducator position for more guidance time. There's no dollar amount that's going up or down because of that. It's just a different use of funds, but we did want to highlight that. Cornwall, there is currently, we talked about an additional teacher in place, and that's a result of increased class size. There was a blend. Same with Shoreham. So it's currently in place, but budget to budget, it looks like an increase. There is a reduction of a 0.5 FTE position at the central office level. That's captured in the district office administration portion. At the high school, we have a net reduction of 1.7 teaching positions and 1.5 support staff positions. Some of those positions, as Bill mentioned, are already vacated. We didn't hire them this year, and we won't need to hire them next year. At MUMS, there's a 0.5 teaching position, that's world language, and a reduction of a 0.2 FTE support staff position that wasn't hired this year. Mary Hogan, there's a reduction of 1.0 teaching position and 2 support staff positions. And then no FTE changes at Ripton. Salisbury has the 1.0 teaching reduction. We already talked about Shoreham, and then Weybridge, the half-time support staff position And in the special education arena, we're going to need to hire, as Michael talked about, a 1.0 special educator to meet increased need of students moving into the district, and then an SLP, which is a speech language pathologist, and that will be district-wide. So some other areas in the budget, our universal pre-K is what we pay, to our private pre-K providers. We talked about that earlier, how now we can count those students, we get a little weight for them. So we pay almost $3,500 per student, and that's supposed to cover 10 hours of pre-K, and that's every school district in the state that has to do that. Our technical center and career education is primarily to the Career Center, Hannaford Career Center. Enrollment has been declining there. It's based on the 6-semester average, and tuition has been increasing. We don't yet know exactly what the tuition will be, but we projected a 5% increase. We should know that soon. Transportation, if you recall, our transportation contract is structured in such a way that the percent increase goes up each year until the end of the contract. We did this to give ourselves some time to try and find efficiencies. When the contract was bid out, it came in initially at, I think, a 40% increase, and we were able to negotiate that down to give us more time to adjust. And we have been able to eliminate some duplicative routes, so we did find some savings for that, so we're not seeing quite as much of an increase as we thought we were going to this year. But we're continuing to work on that. The facilities budget has been held level for at least the past 3 budget cycles. So what we put in this budget is more reflective of what's needed to maintain a district of this size. Contracts, the cost of services has increased over the past 3 years, despite the fact that our budget for facilities has not. So we're trying to reflect that here. And then in professional development and curriculum, you're seeing some pretty big swings. Number one, the large swings are because it's a smaller portion of the budget, so smaller changes will affect it in a greater way in terms of percentage. But there's a cost allocation there. We're moving some costs from the curriculum budget to the professional development budget as a result of the way that the state would like us to code things. And that's also part of where the central office reduction is reflected. For Board of Education, that savings is primarily a result of workers' compensation and liability and property insurance. We're seeing rates stay relatively level for that, so we are able to realize some savings there. And then our debt service is just going up a little bit. I wanted to point out that this upcoming year is the last year of Mary Hogan debt, the Mary Hogan bond from 2000, I think. So we'll be able to budget for that for FY22. And also, there's a Shore debt that's retiring in the coming year, which is much smaller, but nonetheless retiring. We have about $1.7 million in outstanding debt service district-wide. That includes principal and interest. Principal's a little less than $1.5 million. So annually, our debt service payments are just over $300,000, which is around 1% of the budget. And then our contingency, I wanted to talk a little bit about. So normally we carry a little less than 1% in the contingency line. We've done that since the district unified. And right now, there's an additional $125,000 in there, and that's as a result of the potential $125,000 increase that we're projecting. We are going to allocate that in the budget in the future draft to where it actually belongs in student instruction and special education. But we didn't get the information. This went to an arbitrator, statewide. Negotiations went to an arbitrator, so we didn't get notification of that decision until pretty recently. So we'll need to go through and move that cost. So next budget draft, you'll see there will be less in contingency, but student instruction and special education will likely be higher. Below that, cost control expenditures, their estimates. And then right now, under separately warned articles, there's nothing because we need to talk about our use of fund balance. We'll do that in just a little bit. And then on the revenue side, we're seeing some decreases in local revenues. Local revenues primarily a result of tuition and excess cost billing. So I think we're projecting 3 less students than this year for tuition. And then excess cost billing is billing that we do if we have students from out of district attending an ACSD school and receiving IEP services. We're able to bill their sending district back for that. And we have less of that going into the current year. So so our local revenues are down. State revenues are also down a little bit, but everything else is relatively stable. So the expenditure budget's going up 3.6%. When you factor in the decrease in revenues, our education spending is going up 5.23%. And then the loss of pupils creates that 8.84% in education spending equalized people. I wanted to give you a little bit more information about what's contained in the general fund. So you can see here, and you have this in your packet, because I know it's a little small and hard to read up here, but 63% of the general fund goes to student instruction. And then another 15% to special ed. So when you combine these things, you're at 78%. Special ed really can be considered student instruction, but we break them out because most special education costs are at least partially reimbursable by the state, so it's important for us to recognize what those are. And then everything else is a relatively small portion of our general fund. So as it should be, most of these costs are going directly to benefit students. Sorry, I'm right in your way too. And then just sort of a breakdown on what we're spending our money on in the budget. So we talk a lot about fixed costs and what can we actually reduce. So 70% of our costs, 77% of our costs are wages and benefits. Beyond that, the next largest portion is our contracted services, and then 9% is sort of everything else. We have lots of other things baked in there, but mostly these costs are fixed. You can see repair, maintenance, and utilities are 4%, so there's not a lot of wiggle room there. So we talked about that a lot, but I also think it's important to kind of check out the makeup of the budget, see where the costs really are. We have to talk about our fund balance and what we're going to do with it. So I don't have the audited number yet, but I'm estimating that we'll have around $1.2 million available to use for the FY21 budget in however the board sees fit. We have 3 reserve funds: education reserve, healthcare reserve, and capital reserve. The capital reserve will be depleted after this year. The ed reserve will have, I think, around $600,000 in it, and the healthcare reserve still has $200,000 in it. Typically, we have not used, since we have become a unified district, we have not used our fund balance to decrease, as a revenue to decrease the tax rate or our education spending per equalized pupil, because it creates a cliff, right? So if you take one-time money and you don't spend it on one-time expenses, you have to make it up the next year. So if we took all this and used it as revenue, next year we'd have to find $1.2 million in revenue, and it's not guaranteed that you'll have this fund balance, or that you'll be able to cut those expenditures. So given that, and the fact that with our current equalized pupil number, we're above the threshold, my recommendation would be that we consider using just enough of that fund balance to get us below the threshold and not experience the double tax. With the current budget and the current equalized pupil number, that's around $100,000, so it's not insurmountable to overcome in following years. The only caveat to that is that the equalized pupil number will change. It will change as a result of both things going on statewide, changes statewide, and also changes that the state finds in our APMs for this year, students that they didn't count for us. I don't know how much it will change. It's really difficult to predict because of all the weighting factors and the fact that it's not just us, it's not just our enrollment that it affects. So we'll continue to watch that. I think that our approach will not change, regardless of what our equalized pupil number comes in at. I would still recommend whatever it comes in at to use what's necessary to get it down below the threshold. Even if our equalized pupil number were to stay level, we'd be very close to the threshold. So it's something to think about when we're looking forward, because we know that our budget's growing faster than the excess spending threshold. So next steps, equalized pupil updates. Hoping to get an update tomorrow. If I do get an update tomorrow, I'll update these materials and we'll send them out. We'll post them, updated on the in the board materials. We'll start to do tax rate projections in January. We'll get a little more information. We should have CLA by then, so we'll be able to get down to the town level tax rate. And then we'll update any other information that we receive. So some of our revenues we have to estimate at this point. We do get updates on that. I don't expect anything in that arena, like special education revenues or transportation aid or grant fund estimates, to really substantially impact the budget. But we do adjust just because we want to be as accurate as we can. Primarily the things that we're going to be looking at are equalized equal, and we'll be waiting for the CLAs to kind of see how this sugars out into the town tax rate. Questions?
Yes.
Are we able to carve out from this instruction budget number what is just healthcare costs?
Of course, yeah.
And so when we do that, would we be seeing with the changes in staffing, would those changes in staffing be yielding a net neutral teacher instruction number absent the healthcare increase?
That's a good question, and one that I can answer for you next time, but I don't think I should answer it without looking at it closely.
Okay, good.
But I'm happy to look at that for you, or for anyone who might be interested, because I think it's a good number to consider.
The $125,000 estimate for the statewide healthcare negotiation, I assume that that's based on the fact that it now calls for all employees to be offered all levels of coverage, and depending on how many people take advantage of that.
Right.
And that, in our case, that affects really support staff, not teaching staff. I read through the memo very quickly on that, and it seemed like that wasn't going to actually kick in until after the half year.
It's a half year, so it's January 2021. So we'll experience 6 months of that. So our fiscal year is 7/1/20, 6/30/21. So we'll experience 6 months of that, as I'm understanding it. If I get information to the contrary, then I'll definitely adjust.
I thought we weren't going to be. That was more for the faculty that doesn't kick in because it's a January start calendar year.
None of it kicks in until January.
Right.
But as I understood it, there wasn't a ramp up for all tiers of coverage. There was a ramp up for the premium share.
Yep, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there are also changes to the premium share.
I was conflating the two.
Yeah, and so the premium share has a slower ramp up. I think that, I don't know exactly what it is, but all tiers of coverage are available January 2021.
And just for clarity around those two numbers that were presented, there was a 12.9% increase in overall healthcare costs.
In the premiums.
In the premiums. Yes. That is not including then the $125,000.
That's correct.
Just so everybody's clear.
Yes.
Chip.
How do we stack up? I know our contract is a little bit different than the state designated contract now relative to faculty share of premium. Did you elucidate that?
So I think our teachers are, people on our teaching contract are at 84% that we pay right now, and that's, I think.
83.5.
83.5, and then the state contract is 80, so there is some savings there, and I did net that cost into the 125. So that's a net number of what I think that the result will be. For support staff, that won't take effect. That's sort of a ramp for their premium share.
Just ask one other follow-up question to that. I think because it's statewide and each district's different, it's always good to look at, I think, to have some idea of who are the beneficiaries of these type of things and who gets hit really hard. And I guess, would you say that we're sort of in the middle, at least from your minimal knowledge of other districts?
So my sense is that many districts were already at an 80-20, and they went to that because that was sort of the governor's sort of gold standard when we moved to this different structure of a plan, which was the high deductible plans. So the target was 80-20, and that's where a lot of people landed. My sense is also that many districts also offered all tiers of coverage to support staff. So.
I think because of that factor, offering all tiers of coverage, it's going to we're going to feel it more than other districts might.
Well, that's my point. It's just to get some perspective on the
Yeah.
range of benefit or hurt, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, of course, there were some districts that were paying 95% for teachers, and this is going to feel like a big savings for them, but we weren't that far off.
And we don't know what the impact will be. It's moving to an HRA for all.
Right.
So we don't yet know what the impact of that will be as well. That could be a savings. We don't know in terms of how that's going to operate yet.
Yeah.
Right now we offer an HSA and HRA.
But in those districts where the teachers were getting 90 or whatever percentage, the teachers are going to feel as if then,
Oh, yeah.
their pay has gone down.
Yeah.
Significantly.
Yeah.
Yes. Don't think that won't be a factor as we negotiate.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sort of, took the healthcare negotiations off the table, but it opened up all kinds of other considerations.
Yeah.
All right, so the equalized pupil updates, you think you'll get another one tomorrow? And do you think this are going to be ongoing, but not nearly as long as we
Oh,
had
yeah, I
last
think
year?
we're much closer than we were last year. Last time at this year, we didn't even have an equalized pupil number, which was really a hindrance because that's so critical to determining where a budget is going to land. For those of you who aren't familiar, this is a result of the SLDS, another acronym for Statewide Longitudinal Data System. So in the past, prior to last year, we would take our ADM count and we would push the data. And we would say, this is our ADM. It was self-reported. And there's some elements of that now, but the state sort of goes in and takes the data and then scrubs the data, and they don't always do it right. So some students are missed, or there's all kinds of elements. So they're in year 2. So this is significantly better than last year. We have a number. I'm happy about that. I don't think our number is going to get any worse. But I do think that we are missing some students. So I think we're going to see some changes. So I'm expecting an update tomorrow. I'll be knocking on Brad James' door, 8 in the morning. Give me my update, but I think that we're much closer.
So then our next look at this budget will be the first Monday in January.
6th, I think.
Yeah, and then just a reminder that pretty much every Monday we're meeting in January.
Or Tuesday.
As needed.
Or
Yeah,
Tuesday.
Yeah.
And as Brittany mentioned, the next iteration will have more detail in terms of individual schools and central office budgets as well.
Peter,
Yeah.
I'd like to commend Rick and everybody else, because I think this is a very clear expression of the challenges, of the changes of the individual schools, and what may change that way. And I really think, having been through these for a long time, I expressed it very well, and I think I understand it.
All right. All right, thank you.
For now.
Anything further on that topic for the moment?
So,
so Brittany, in terms of getting new numbers and new adjustments,
Yeah.
where can we find those adjustments?
So I'll email them to you, and I'll have Sharon update them on the board pack, and then she'll post the meeting materials to the website, so they'll be accessible.
Great. All right. That covers our main topics for tonight. Any board members have anything they'd like to report out? Okay. If not, I do want to take a moment to, and we've done now 4 community forums, or meetings with parent groups or whatever. And I just really want to thank all board members who have come and those who have been there in spirit as well. They have been, I would say, overall very positive, very helpful. I've been to all of them. They've been very helpful to me. And just a big shout out to Jen and the Planning and Engagement Committee for doing all the coordination for these. It's been, getting everything together has been really good. And we hear a lot about these community partnership councils. And those of us who were in Shoreham last night got to see it in action. They were the folks who put it all together, who organized the meeting. And as Mike said, you can really feel the enthusiasm for that Community Partnership Council, and it was really great to see it in action.
It's not a slide out of control.
It's not a slide out of control.
No, slide in control.
Yes.
Well, just to comment on that, because when unification began, there was this dip in that type of response, in that individual communities lost their school board, so to speak, which was sort of their access in whatever way they had it. Some communities had stronger parent groups, or however you wanted to define them. But I think it's good to hear that this was our goal, along with the individual school goals, to have this regenerated, because that's our access as a board into that system and their access into us. Not the only access, but it is definitely an important conduit, and so I commend those places that are doing it, and I really hope it spreads and becomes successful everywhere and ongoing, because there's no other way. We're pretty separated if we don't have that.
All right, well, on that note, I would welcome a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I think George, you? Yeah. All in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. Thank you.